Good evening, everyone. My name is Juan Carlos Sanchez, and the topic I will be discussing today is in regards to the drug war in Mexico. Drugs. Did I get everyone's attention already? I don't have any on me. Alright, so drug trafficking from Mexico is not a relatively new issue. However, what makes this particular instance arguable is that in December of 2006, newly elected President Felipe Calderón sent 6,500 troops, Mexican troops, into the state of Michoacán in an effort to crack down on cartel violence, and which some experts argue was what initiated the conflict that still continues today. Now, the proposition that I bring up today is that American officials are doing little to stop the current war in Mexico. And the 2 points that I want to make in support of this claim is, number one, United States officials fail to shut down the flow of weapons into Mexico, and number two, the same United States officials fail to fight actively against drug distribution. Okay, so allow me to explain why this is important. Approximately a month and a half ago, we all received an email through Bronco Direct warning us of the increasing tension going on south of the border. The email specifies to be precautious on our spring break and asks that we spend our vacation within the country, particularly out of Mexico. As a result, most of us spent our break here and not tanning in wonderful Cancun or building our alcohol tolerance in exciting Baja California. Okay, so my first point is that the U.S. officials failed to shut down the flow of weapons in Mexico. On April 12, 2009, in an appearance on CBS's Face the Nation program, Mexican Ambassador Arturo Sacuran said that 90% of the weapons intercepted in Mexico come from the United States. He also states, and I quote, "The key issue right now is how can the United States help to shut down those guns and shut down that bulk cash that is providing the drug syndicates in Mexico, the wherewithal to corrupt, to bribe, to kill." So what does it mean? It means that guns are easily obtained. In California, for example, you only need to be 18 to have a long gun, and only 21 to be able to purchase a handgun. And although the NRA argues that it's part of our Second Amendment, the fact of the matter is that gun control is not being regulated enough. Another issue that aids the flow of heavy guns to Mexico is the expired ban of assault weapons. In an article by Jill Lawrence from USA Today, Lawrence states that the expiration of the 10-year-old ban had drove up businesses and many gun stores across the country. And up till this day, there has been no reinstatement of the ban. This poses a major problem considering the correlation that the ambassador of Mexico brought up with the recent seizures of all the cartel's arms and weapons, ammunition. The consequence of this is that the drug cartels are better armed than the Mexican officials, making it difficult for them to fight their battle. Now, the second point is that the second point that I brought up was that the U.S. officials also failed to fight against drug distribution. Now, I realize there's a DEA, but it really makes no difference when drugs are even easier to obtain than guns. And I say this with confidence, because I was first offered drugs in the 7th grade and every year after that. So gang violence is still present throughout the country as well. In a statement found on the Federal Bureau of Investigation's website, Los Angeles County Sheriff Lee Baca said, "Some of our local street gangs have morphed into international crime syndicates using the latest technology. They have become sophisticated and have set up networks to carry out their criminal enterprises. Their funding coming from the sale of illegal substances." So the sale of illegal drugs by the Mexican cartels has been a very profitable one that will keep the cartels fighting by any means to be able to keep their market. I saw on Primer Impacto, it's a Mexican, it's a Spanish TV news. It's an estimated $10 billion that the cartels make per year on marijuana alone. And this is just excluding the money wires. This is just cash. So obviously this is very profitable, and they're going to keep fighting, for whatever it takes. The bottom line is that as long as the Americans are willing to purchase the drugs, the cartel is going to do whatever it takes to bring it over here, to smuggle it over. So now that I've addressed my secondary claims, I'm going to briefly discuss some potential opposition, including the effectiveness of the Mexican officials and, their corruption, and the corruption within the system. So I actually picked this up. This is yesterday's newspaper article. And right here it says, Dure golpe a la familia. Arrestan 44 presuntos narcotraficantes del cartel michoacano. This is front page news. And what's going on here is that the Mexican officials, La Familia is the name of the cartel Michoacán, and they already arrested 44 suspects of narco trafficking. So you can't say that the Mexican officials have not been doing their part. And also, in a statement taken by MSNBC, President Calderon vowed to clean up corruption, saying, "To get rid of organized crime, we must first clean up our own house." Conclusively, Mexico is fighting a war against cartels that are fueled by the United States. First, because U.S. officials failed to shut down the flow of weapons into Mexico, and second, because they failed to actively fight against the distribution and consumption of drugs. With all that said, and the evidence presented, it is difficult to argue that Mexican officials are not doing their part. However, it is safe to say that American officials are doing little to stop the current war in Mexico.
All right, the claim is very clearly labeled. The setup of the secondary claims is solid. There's good background information. You even give us a justification why we should care about it sitting here in this particular audience. The signposts on the secondary claims in the body of the speech are pretty clear. The question of what all contributes to the drug wars, I think, is a little bit narrower. Obviously, there are issues concerning interconnecting competition between the cartels that fuels this. There are the different kinds of drugs that are being dealt with. The level of violence, for instance, needs to be comparative. You mentioned at one point the comparison to when the assault weapons ban was in place, and I'm wondering, okay, well, the ban went out of effect at a particular point. Is it subsequent to that we got the increase in the amount of violence? And of course, you need to associate the violence that's going on there with those assault weapons. But I thought you did a good job giving examples and some testimony on a couple of those points. I thought it was very solid use of expert testimony on a couple of points. Let me see. The discussion of the rebuttal issue was okay. There are, of course, other questions that are going to come up, and I assume that that's probably where the respondent is going to spend a lot of their time. I thought the generalizations were pretty reasonable. I appreciated the sarcasm in some of the speaking points. I thought that was fine. I enjoyed it, and I thought that you had a really good summary of your position. So the presentation issues are all really good. Thank you, sir.